Hi, good morning. I hope everyone is well. I am Zarif Tajwar Kareem, and this is Lecture 6 of SOC 101. We are going to be continuing our discussion on the topic of culture and society. And today we are going to be touching upon early human culture. Now, talking about early human culture, we have to understand that human beings have been able to adapt to different environments that have come to pass over the ages. To understand the forms of society that existed before modern industrialism, we call on the historical dimension of sociological imagination. Now, you have understood and learned about sociological imagination in the past, so I'm not going to be touching upon that. But let's talk about the early human cultures. First, the first evidence of human like culture dates back 2 million years. Early humans then were able to create such things as stone tools. They hunted animals. They were able to gather nuts, berries. They were able to use fire and established a cooperative way of life. They were able to work together in order to create these tools and then use these tools for their necessary survival. Now, culture enabled these early humans to compensate for their particular physical limitations, such as animals having claws or sharp teeth, which human beings don't have. So it was necessary for us to create tools like the stone tools, like a spear, like bow and arrow, and everything of the sort, which we could use to close the gap we had with the predators in the wild who had them naturally. They had sharp teeth. Tigers have sharp teeth and claws. So we could adapt to those different environments, to the differences in our capabilities as animals. The larger, more complex human brain is our benefit. The aspect that we had that was differentiating us from the animals was, of course, the capacity to think, to imagine, and to create, which animals do not have. It allowed us to take part in adaptive learning, and we were able to deal with major environmental changes, just like the ice age. We were able to deal with that, but certain animals went extinct because of that. We were able to fashion clothing that was helped us go through the ice age, through the cold, everything of the sort. Through the drastic changes in the weather, we because of the drastic changes in the weather, we had to learn how to adapt. And we were able to do so because now we human beings still exist to the present day. Uh, Human beings are very flexible. They are able to survive unpredictable challenges in their surroundings and shape the world and their world with their ideas and tools. So by creating these things, they are able to influence how people behave in the world. Since the creation and use of fire or the wheel, we have new ways of cooking and having different kinds of foods, which was not possible for us to process before. Our body wasn't able to process certain kinds of food without cooking. But since the advent of fire, uh, the, the creation of fire in that sort, we were able to then consume those kinds of foods. And this also allowed us then to go forward, like at the wheel, to change our form of transport. We were now able to transport larger amounts of food, larger amounts of any kinds of goods, any kinds of maybe clothes to tools from one place to another. And this allowed for greater adaptability to certain situations. Now, The ability we have to secure food and make clothing and create shelter are dependent on the physical resources that were close at hand. Cultures varied widely according to the geographic and climatic conditions from that particular region. Some places were deserts, some places were rainforests, some had to deal with the Arctic temperatures. So it was important to note that early human culture did innovate and adapt to their surroundings, and they innovated based on what was around and available for them. Now let's talk about the kinds of early human cultures. So an example of that, as you can see here on the screen, is the hunting and gathering societies, and another is the pastoral societies. Now, hunter and gatherers gained their livelihood from hunting, fishing, and gathering wild edible plants. These cultures existed in different parts of the world, like in parts of India, Africa, Australia, uh, places like Brazil, New Guinea, all over the world. The oldest and most experienced men in these cultures had an important part to play in making the decisions. They were the ones who were making the decisions that eventually affected the group. But differences in power were much less distinct than in larger types of societies. Like how we now are thinking about this person, the elder, as a leader of that society, who has a higher position than the other people. But it wasn't so distinct. There wasn't no classification like that. The culture called for the elder to make these important decisions. But it wasn't in his responsibilities. It wasn't something he had to do or was using his power he was using his power to influence the group. It was rather that the culture permitted the eldest, the most experienced person in that group to make the decisions because they have seen and adapted the most and has survived. Right. So these people are going around, and were primarily these societies were segregated according to gender, in the sense that hunting was mainly done by men because men had the better physical capability to go hunt bigger game, and the larger game they could hunt, they were able to survive for a longer period of time. While acts such as gathering wild edible plants, fishing, these were considered less physical activities and were handled mostly by the women. But another thing that we have to consider is that during that time, the differences we understand and the separation of genders did not exist so concretely. They were actually quite more fluid. If, for example, a man was not able to hunt and defend for their family, the woman would go out and catch the kind of game that was possible for her to do. So your roles weren't designated based on that, really. It was based on necessity and whatever was easier at the time in order to survive. So their main goal was to survive, was not to make on these differentiations so that make on these differentiations that exist in society today. So pastoral societies relied mainly on domesticated livestock, and agrarian societies grew from crops. These were the main two of the time. The pastoral societies were mainly in Europe, where, due to the colder climate, it couldn't become an agrarian society. They could only be able to make certain kinds of food products, grow them, plants. So they opted to be more pastoral societies where their food was based on the domesticated livestock that was available for them, and hence their societies grew based around that. They used to make cheese, milk, bread was an important aspect of their food, but they didn't have enough vegetables or fruits for them to become an agrarian society. An agrarian society is like that of one here in Bangladesh, or in the other tropical countries around the world. They were agrarian societies because they had the necessary resources to uh, plant and grow different kinds of fruits, vegetables, grow rice in order to have rice, and henceforth our culture was informed by that. It was informed by the way that we had structured society on the base of our food resource, on how we grow our food, on how we get and provide food for the society going forward. For us, it was agrarian. For Europeans, it's mainly pastoral. And it's not that we do not have pastoral activities in societies, agrarian societies. And it is not that pastoral societies are mainly just focusing on productions of food through the means of domesticated animals. But it is that that was their main form of production of food. And since that was the means of survival, it influenced the way that the society was structured and the decisions that were made during that time. So pastoral societies uh, is are societies where substance is derived from the rearing of domesticated animals, and agrarian societies are those whose means of substance are based around agricultural production, crop growing. Now, let's talk about something of a more modern society. And this came about with the Industrial Revolution. Industrialization, as you can see here, is the emergence of machine production based on the use of inanimate power resources like steam or electricity. The industrialized or modern societies are different from the previous type of social structures or orders in many ways, and their development has consequences stretching far beyond the origin of industrialization, which is Europe, because discoveries and inventions in one field led to more in others. So, because of that innovation happening in the European world, it had a ripple effect. It affected how we see and continue on producing the things we need to survive. Industrialization made it much more easier to produce things in mass quantity, but also had created a space where unemployment was rife, because now machines were able to do the work that human beings were doing by hand. And the pace of the technological innovations in industrial society is extremely rapid, and it cannot be compared with that of a traditional social system like uh, hunting and gathering societies, or pastoral societies, or agricultural societies. The rate of innovation was much faster. So someone that was tilling soil and planting a seed to grow a crop is still doing it today. The innovation has gone slow. Unless you are a mass production company of that kind of crop product, whether it be a fruit, whether it be a vegetable, you don't have the resources to and access to that kind of innovation. And that kind of innovation, to even plant the seeds or till the soil, or pick up the vegetables after it has grown to its limit, is only possible right now because of the industrial revolution, because of the innovations that came about it. We were able to even progress the production uh, of crops, and also of pastoral products like cheese and milk. So it's not like we left that behind, but rather the innovation led us to different avenues. We did not have to be so focused and put so much effort into producing these goods. We now had time to think about other innovations and move forward with those innovations. The industrial societies were the first nation states. Uh, Nation states are political communities that are uh, clearly create borders, uh, that they create borders and shared cultures. So nation states are etching out a particular region, or space within that region and establishing a country within that. And how can you build a country without a shared culture? For example, Bangladesh, here we have a shared Bengali culture. We have similarities with West Bengal in India. But our culture here in Bangladesh is based off the Bengali culture that has been around here in the region. The same goes for America. The same goes for any part of Europe. Same goes for Japan. These cultures are existing based on the borders that now we can see on a map. So those borders were then created, and then certain shared values were given to them. They were initially, these nation states were quite vague and had separate the traditional ideas of the state that we had before during the feudal era. Now, nation state governments have extensive power over the aspect of citizens' lives. They are framing laws that apply to those living within the borders that have been created. And sociology first emerged as a discipline that studied industrial societies and its development in Europe and North America. It was influenced by the change that happened due to the Industrial Revolution. Now, if we look at the definition of industrialization, it is the process of machine production of goods. And industrial societies are strongly developed nation states in which the majority of the population works in factories or offices rather than in agriculture, and most people live in urban areas. Now, that is the end of lecture 6. The rest of the topics that remain will be discussed with you in class. Thank you.